The horrifying truth of the Australia social media ban, and the Prime Minister just told all these teens to go touch some grass. And so if you haven't been following this, Australia just banned social media for kids under 16. Some say that it's government overreach and others say it's for protection.
But before we get into the horrifying realities behind why this ban even exists, the internet is melting down and Australian teens are furious. ABC covered the outrage here.
All this is doing is stopping our voice, stopping our creative outlets.
Imagine telling more than 4 million kids they can no longer have an account on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube until they turn 16. That's just what the country of Australia did 3 days ago, and users made one thing clear in their final posts: the kids down under are not backing down easily.
You're taking away the way that we communicate with our friends, the way that we feel connected to the world.
As young Australians,
I think that's an interesting point. Like, social media is like, they live and breathe. This is the first generation that's grown up.
A great touch point for kids to stay connected is social media.
Well, and like Gen Z, first generation to grow up like with an iPhone in their hand, like from young. Like, so I think that's an interesting point that they're making.
we will be completely silenced and cut off from our country and the rest of the world with this.
So that's interesting. He's going after like First Amendment kind of, well, in America.
Which, do they have that in Australia?
I don't know. I don't know how theirs works, but at least in America, we know that it's like, First Amendment rights.
Ban.
Now teens are fighting back. 15-year-old Noah Jones is taking the issue to the High Court. He robs 2.6 million young Australians of a right to freedom of political communication implied in Australia's constitution.
I personally feel like it's going to be less safe than what we already have now.
Keanne Babbitt, a 13-year-old content creator, says the ban could have an adverse effect, potentially opening a gateway to other, less regulated sites.
There's always going to be a new platform which is less monitored and less and unsafer than the ones.
That's actually not a bad point, is that there's going to be other platforms that don't regulate or enforce the under 16 restriction, and kids are just going to be doing sketchy things on those platforms instead of being able to be monitored on platforms.
Yeah, which
that
at the end
knows.
we'll kind of talk about, like, no matter what the government is or isn't doing with like these kinds of restrictions and policies, like the role of the family in that and like how to navigate some of those pieces, because I think that even speaks to what kind of teen do we want to be, and like are we aware of internet safety? Why would we intentionally go on a platform that's like less safe, like as a teenager that wants to stay protected, So I think it's kind of, I get what he's saying, but it's also like, as a teen, you have a choice of the platforms you're going to go on and how you're going to engage on those platforms and how safe or not safe you're going to be on those platforms too. But this is where the Prime Minister actually tells these kids to go touch grass. This is pretty funny.
Serving up potentially unhealthy content. Australia's Prime Minister offering this advice.
Start a new sport, learn a new instrument, or read that book. And importantly, spend quality time with your friends and your family.
It's a
That's some great advice right there.
Right.
Hey, go
just
do something useful with your life. Just go be productive.
Just don't stay online perpetually. I think that's really funny.
That's awesome.
But social media expert Jonathan Haidt actually pushes back on this, saying that not all of these teens are actually understanding the law accurately. And he even says that his preferences go even further than this. So Jonathan Haidt is a PhD in social psychology and the author of New York Times bestselling book, The Anxious Generation: How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness. And he argues it's because of social media, which actually makes his pushback make a lot of sense. Let's go ahead. He posted this on his Instagram.
Social media before 16, that really should be 18, because talking with strangers and exchanging intimate information with strangers is an inherently adult activity.
That's interesting. So he's saying restrict social media, not just at 16, but 18. Because interacting with strangers like that is inherently an adult activity.
I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, I felt like that was an interesting point.
My point is just no smartphone before high school, no social media before 16, phone-free schools. I'm interested in making them spend a lot less time on their phones and on social.
And so his book dives into even like the mental health impact, which we'll get into in a bit as well, like of social media and screen time, like on kids, how it's totally changed the brain chemistry and the wiring like of kids as well, which is why he like talks about that too.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I know Simon Sinek talked about how even in boardrooms with meetings that everyone, and this has been happening for a while, but like when you're waiting in a room for something, everyone's just on their phone as adults who did not grow up with these devices. And so the impact of how that just changes how kids interact with each other as they're learning to interact with each other as a whole. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's actually really true. Good point.
Social media. So I think an age limit of 16 to open an account. That's what the Australia bill is about. People are misunderstanding this. People think that, nobody can watch YouTube if they're under 16. You have to show a
which is exactly what these teens were saying, that they're going to be taken away from just like the ability to even engage with the greater world, which is a big deal when we have such like a connected world because of the internet. Yeah. He's saying that that's a misunderstanding.
Driver's license to watch. No, that is not true at all. What the Australia bill says, you can't enter into a relationship with a corporation. You can't sign the terms of service. You can't agree to give away your data to them. You can't agree to have the algorithms trained on you that get to know you until you're 16. Governments need to change the crazy idea that as long as you say you're 13, you can go anywhere. That's completely insane. No social.
That is interesting.
That is. That's such a good question. Should minors be able to enter legal contracts with multi-billion-dollar companies that can then use and sell their info as kids?
That's because like I remember when I turned 18 and it was like really crazy to then like go off to college and have like all these forms to sign and like not have my parent sign it as well, like you felt like an adult, but then I was also like calling my mom and I was like, what does this mean? And like, should I sign this,
Right.
But then
which you still do, by the way.
Yes, I actually still do, which that's what moms are for. You always need your mom. And my mom's my favorite. So, but like, even like this terms and conditions where you just like go on a site and they're like terms and conditions and you're like, yeah, check, didn't read it. And like, that's so normal nowadays. And then we've just passed that on to minors. And yet the information that these companies are collecting on these kids is insane. Like, are minors able to even consent to that? Can they even, their prefrontal cortexes aren't fully developed. Like, do they even have the ability to fully understand the full consequence of giving their data away? Because I don't even think adults understand the full consequences of giving their data away.
For sure. And we know that this type of legislation has even come down to Arizona, where they've actually banned phones during class time. And being in different schools, it's actually been refreshing. It honestly has been a positive shift from what we've seen in the classroom. Yeah,
not all campuses are as strict as other campuses, but the ones that are more strict, like, it's been so refreshing. I feel like the students are able to listen better. They're not distracted. They're more engaged.
It's definitely more fun.
So much more fun.
We're able just to do our thing in there. We like have a lot of like fun, hype activities that we do, and everyone's just like more engaged with it.
But yeah, like we bring in speakers, we're blasting music, like we're the guest presenters. We want to have fun. We don't want to be like babysitting or monitoring phones and being the bad guy and be like, hey, put that away, So it's been so much more fun with students like in the classroom to actually have it to where like we don't have to worry about that at all. It's just like taken care of. So why is Jonathan recommending such intense tech restrictions? Well, the horrifying impact of social media on kids is actually insane. We're going to go through a couple different like sources to kind of dive into this and really understand the impact of social media. So this actually comes from the Utah Department of Health and Human Services, Unmask the Dangers of Social Media. It says up to 95% of youth ages 13 to 17 report using a social media platform, with more than 1/3 saying they use social media almost constantly. That means they are on social media for hours on end. And this dives into even the harms of social media. Teens who spent more than 3 hours per day on social media face double the risk of experiencing poor mental health outcomes. Gen Z is by far the most depressed, the loneliest generation, like the highest rates of like self-deletion of like any other generation before them. Like Gen Alpha seems to be following in like the same trends. They're also the first generations to grow up with screens like this.
Yeah.
It says nearly half of teens ages 13 to 17 said using social media makes them feel worse. Like that's like self-reported. And like this has sources too. So you can go to like the actual like data and sources. It says almost 60% of teen girls say they've been contacted by a stranger on social media platforms in ways that make them feel uncomfortable. So there's like a predatory aspect here as well. There's cyberbullying it talks about. And so this is just, there's a lot of different pieces. Even excessive social media use has been linked to sleep problems, attention problems, and feelings of exclusion among teenagers. So that's a lot to be facing.
Yeah, it's a bad,
as a kid.
Math is not adding up in a worthwhile direction there.
No, and we see trends of like when social media and the smartphone came together, because like back in what, like 2005, 2003 is when social media, like Facebook, I think 2005-ish, 2007-ish. So when Facebook came on the scene.
Yeah, something like that.
Smartphone came on the scene like around that time. But the first like smartphone with social media apps came in the early 2010s. And this shows the daily time with friends by age group. We can see these 15 to 20-year-olds.
Dang,
like after 2011, just dropped. It says daily average spend time with friends in minutes. Only the youngest age group shows a sharp drop before the 2020 data collection. That's actually really sad. Like if kids aren't spending as much time with their friends because of devices.
And that was all before 2020.
That was all before COVID. Yes, absolutely. And then it talks about the sleep, which this is insane. I can't tell you how many kids just like fall asleep in the classroom. We actually had a miracle this last semester. We were like blasting music. Brandon's got his little like buzzer that like type of deal. And there was a student that slept through all of it.
Oh like, yeah, I was impressed actually.
And he was right in front of the speakers.
Yeah. Yep.
So kids definitely not getting more than 7 hours of sleep. But teens who get less than 7 hours of sleep, look at that, almost 50% of girls now.
These girls are crazy.
This is all before COVID, guys. And this gray line is when like the smartphone and social media like married.
Everyone thinks that boys are the problem.
Girls. But like sleep deprivation, like that is like a form of like torture, you know? And like you need like you are so much more likely to die early from like getting consistently like too little sleep than you are like a bunch of other things. Like there are some long-term health impacts on this that are very concerning as well.
Yeah, that shot up like crazy.
It did. This one's also fascinating. So this is actually a screenshot of an internal Facebook presentation brought out by Frances Haugen. Now she is a whistleblower to Facebook. This is a screenshot from like Facebook's like, it was like a staff meeting or executive meeting. Yeah, it was like behind the scenes. None of us should have seen this, right? So this is Emotion Novelty Reward. It's got a teen girl in the center. The caption, these little words down here, says teens' decisions and behaviors are mainly driven by emotion, the intrigue of novelty and reward. While these all seem positive, they make teens very vulnerable at the elevated levels they operate on, especially in the absence of a mature frontal cortex to help impose limits on the indulgence in these. So Facebook knows that they have an addictive platform and that teens' brains work this way. And actually, I didn't realize this till we were researching for this. The Wall Street Journal has this whole entire research on the Facebook files.
Oh my gosh. Y'all, Epstein is not the only one who's got some files out on him. Facebook's got him too.
So these are actually internal Facebook documents, including research reports, online employee discussions, and drafts of presentations to senior management. And guys, what was leaked in these files is not good for Facebook. It actually shows that they're very aware of the harms of their platform and they don't do enough. It says Facebook knows Instagram is toxic for many teen girls, company documents show. Jeez. And yet they're still like promoting this heavily to teen girls. We actually heard from like a whistleblower. What was her name?
Frances
Haugen. We actually heard from Frances Haugen, the whistleblower for Facebook, at a conference last year, and she was talking about some of these components. It says Facebook employees flag drug cartels and human traffickers. The company's response is weak, documents show. So the platform is aware that there are predators that are actually targeting kids, and they're not doing enough about it to actually stop it. And then number 15 is pretty crazy. It says, is Facebook bad for you? It is for about 360 million users. Company surveys suggest. Facebook researchers have found that 1 in 8 of the app's users report engaging in compulsive use of social media that affects their sleep, work, parenting, or relationships. And the problems were perceived by users to be worse on Facebook than any other major social media platform.
Honestly, I was playing Cops and Robbers with my nieces, and their dad went to jail for spending too much time on Facebook.
Oh, even like the 5-year-olds, 4-year-olds, they know. That's too funny. Did they really put them in jail?
It was really,
in jail for that. That's too funny. But guys, like this goes even beyond just like mental illness. We know that 1 in 5 minors now report experiencing sextortion. And the average age of exposure to hardcore internet porn is 8 to 11 years old. To like the prepubescent brain, that is the same as being like physically essayed. 75% of parents actually believe that their kids have never encountered corn. But of those kids, of those parents, 53% actually have seen corn. We also know that 88% of 13 to 17-year-olds interact with people online that they do not know in person. So the horrifying reality of all of this isn't just that social media engages in mental illness and is cause teens to be more depressed and lonely and feel worse about themselves and struggle with their self-image. It's like oftentimes social media affects girls more than boys because of that piece. But then it's also opening kids up to like an insane amount of predators that have access to them at like the touch of a button. Like that has never happened before in the history of the world.
Yeah, there's
It's
never
crazy.
been like this many ways for kids to be exploited.
Yes.
Really, like on several different facets. And so curious, what do you think? Are the risks worth the restrictions for social media?
Yeah, we think this is an interesting bill by Australia. We're interested to see kind of how it goes. We're going to keep tabs on it. But one thing we did want to talk about before we close this out is just like the success of families navigating these dynamics, I think is really important. Like the government can make restrictions, but ultimately it's the values within the family that really inform how kids are going to operate online, whether or not these restrictions are there from like the government down. And we call these value and victory conversations. And it's what we encourage all of our parents to do. It's what like my mom did with me all growing up, which I really loved. So value conversations are discussions about the intrinsic values and worldview that you hold as a family. This applies to like morality and moral ethics. But on the other hand, you also have victory conversations. And these are all about equipping your kids before they even find themselves in compromising situations. It's giving them the tools, the frameworks to be able to navigate those moral and ethical curveballs. And I think that there's a lot of discussions, a lot of opportunities that parents can have with their kids from really young ages before they ever introduce social media. Like we know a lot of parents are going towards like the safe devices where they're not allowing their kids to have social media or like the traditional smartphones. But even when parents are doing that, we encourage them to have conversations with their kids about like, hey, when you do get full access to the internet, like unrestricted, even if that's when you're 18 and you're paying your own like internet bill, like let's talk about how do we interact online. Let's talk about, you know, what this looks like so that when you are out on your own, like you are prepared, you know what you're facing.
That's
you
so
know?
good, because if parents just restrict and a bunch of like access to technology, like all these things, and then release kids when they're 18, they can make whatever choice they want. Like the amount that a young person is then prepared to navigate all those options. Like I love what you're saying about value and victory conversations, because it really is like it's just those steps each along the way to become a functioning adult.
Absolutely.
And so,
because we've even seen parents that have had those value and victory conversations while allowing their teens to have access to social media. And their teens are probably the most like responsible teens that we've ever like seen before. Even though we're not necessarily fans of like social media, like for teens, like unrestricted, but because they had those value and victory conversations and had them so early, and it was just kind of like the natural part of like the ethos of the family, those kids were able to navigate social media in a way that was very different than other kids. And I think even if they had been restricted, they probably would have navigated, therefore, even better by the time they turned, 18. So I think those are really powerful ways that families can approach this no matter what your government is doing.
right.
Social media.
And so again, let us know, do you think these social media bans are government overreach or necessary protection? And if you want to hear more about value and victory conversations, let us know in the comments.